Yu Hyol, a third-rate warrior with no courage to his name, has lived a life built on false rumors and petty altercations. One day, his already pitiful existence takes a turn for the worse when Seolhwa, the woman he promised to marry long ago, reappears as a master martial artist ready to take action. From that moment, his story spirals, and he goes viral as a menace and enemy of the state, even catching the attention of the royal court. But before diving into how he survived such attention, let's rewind to the beginning. Yu Hyol's tale begins in the snowy mountains of no man's land, where he desperately tried, and failed, to protect the things he cherished most. Angry at his weakness, the young Yu Hyol decided to cut ties with Seolhwa, his sweetheart at the time, who was only 10 years old. He promised to return for her once he became the world's greatest martial artist. Helpless, Seolhwa could only watch with tearful eyes as the love of her life faded into the distance. Years have since passed, and the two have lived separate lives, awaiting an eventual reunion. More than a decade later, in the bustling streets of Miram State, a young adventurer sits in a tavern, regaling two men with tales of his recent triumphs against monsters and enemies. The adventurer, Jo Yoon, thanks the Yanwon Guild members for their hospitality, but when they invite him to join their guild, he politely declines. He explains he has an important oath to keep. The men respect his decision but warn him to be cautious of the dangers lurking in the area, especially in their village, Six Clan Village. Curious, Jo Yoon asks for details. The men reveal the rumor of a monster terrorizing their village. Known as the Two Supernovas, this figure is said to hunt martial artists and carry their corpses in a bloody sack. Before Jo Yoon can respond, a man carrying a bloodied sack enters the tavern, startling everyone. At first, the drunken patrons struggle to identify the stranger. Soon, however, they recognize him as the merciless martial artist killer, Yu Hyol, the chaotic sword demon of the heretic faction. Yu Hyol demands the innkeeper's presence, but the assistant explains that the innkeeper is out of business. Terrified by the bloodied sack, the assistant offers to help Yu Hyol carry it, but Yu Hyol refuses, warning him not to touch his prey. The assistant quickly apologizes and retreats. Meanwhile, whispers fill the tavern as everyone speculates about the chaotic sword demon. Noticing the sack moving, Yu Hyol realizes his prey is still alive. As he prepares to end its suffering, Jo Yoon suddenly thrusts his spear at Yu Hyol, challenging him to a duel. Though the tavern patrons think Jo Yoon has lost his mind, the young adventurer is determined to defeat Yu Hyol and restore balance to the martial world. Yu Hyol, however, bursts into laughter and advises Jo Yoon to reconsider his decision. When Jo Yoon insists on fighting, Yu Hyol attempts to intimidate him into backing down. But Jo Yoon accuses him of making excuses and demands he honor the challenge. Needing time to think, Yu Hyol asks Jo Yoon to wait outside while he prepares for the duel. The two guild members try to dissuade Jo Yoon, warning him that Yu Hyol is a cowardly demon with no equal, willing to use any means to get his way. Unfazed, Jo Yoon thanks them for their concern, but reiterates his oath to become stronger than the strongest. Meanwhile, Yu Hyol slips out of the tavern, considering fleeing the village altogether. He hadn't come to cause trouble, he just wanted to sell his prey. The bloodied sack, it turns out, contains a wild boar he hunted carelessly, and he only forbade the assistant from touching it because the innkeeper cooks excellent meals. Misunderstood by society and burdened by his appearance, Yu Hyol wonders how he ended up in such a mess. As a third-rate warrior with no martial arts talent, all he wants is to live long enough to see Seolhwa again and fulfill his promise. The next morning, a silver-haired, elegantly dressed young woman arrives in Six Clan Village. She stops to observe Jo Yoon, who is still calling out for Yu Hyol to face him in a life-or-death duel. As the crowd gathers, the woman approaches Jo Yoon. Struck by her beauty, Jo Yoon hesitates as she asks if he's serious about challenging the chaotic sword demon. The onlookers recognize the woman as Baek Seolhwa, the Sun and Moon Sword. She is the direct disciple of the previous world's greatest martial artist, who once defeated the strongest of all factions. Known as the Dragon and Phoenix of martial arts, she is considered the opposite of the chaotic sword demon. Jo Yoon, suspecting she is also after Yu Hyol, asks if she's here to capture him. Blushing, Seolhwa confirms his suspicions, revealing that Yu Hyol, her lifelong sweetheart, is nearby. Enchanted by her, Jo Yoon abandons his mission and asks her to join him instead. Meanwhile, Yu Hyol, still hiding, decides to report the illegal duel to the authorities. However, his plans are interrupted when someone enters the tavern. Begging the intruder for more time, Yu Hyol freezes as Seolhwa steps in. She informs him that she's waited years to see him again. Now a master martial artist, she swiftly defeats Jo Yoon, declares she has plenty of money, and proposes to Yu Hyol, asking him to marry her. Moments after Jo Yoon collapses, medics rush to the scene to revive him. As he's taken to a hospital, Seolhwa and Yu Hyol are left alone in the inn, with spectators outside wondering if a clash is about to unfold. There's a tense silence as the two stare each other down. Finally, Yu Hyul breaks the ice, trying to convince Seolhwa that he isn't the chaotic sword demon everyone claims he is. It's all a ploy to buy himself time to escape. Seolhwa, visibly annoyed, glares at him. Yu Hyul dismisses her as an unhinged woman who kicks down doors with a sword. Hoping to evade her wrath, he nonchalantly stands up, bids her farewell, and heads toward the door. But before he gets far, Seolhwa stops him, removes his handguard, places his hand on her soft cheek, and urges him to repeat what he just said, just like he used to in the old days. At that moment, Yu Hyul can't resist her anymore and softly calls her name, Seolhwa, the way he used to long ago. Flashbacks reveal their shared past. 15 years ago, Yu Hyul was sold to Seolhwa, a noblewoman, as a slave. Despite their circumstances, they bonded, and he became her devoted servant. She was 3 years younger than him, and the youngest lady of her household. Yu Hyul confesses to himself that Seolhwa was the sole reason he ventured into the world and aimed to return to Jianghu, his beginning and end. As they sit down for tea, Yu Hyul quietly wonders if Seolhwa is still the same person he fell in love with. Breaking the awkward silence, Seolhwa asks if he plans to drink his tea. When he says yes, she questions why he's acting so strange and formal, despite his promise to stop doing so. Yu Hyul apologizes, addressing her as Lady Seolhwa, but this only angers her further. To appease her, he switches to her favorite nickname, Seola, and expresses how happy he is to see her again. Seolhwa softens, giving him an affectionate look, and says she's happy to see him too. Curious, Yu Hyul asks if she's become a martial artist. Seolhwa proudly confirms, saying she worked hard for the promise. Confused, Yu Hyul asks what she means, and Seolhwa recites the last words he said to her before they were separated as children. She reminds him of their promise and asks him to marry her again. This time, Yu Hyul panics, remembering the promise was incomplete. Seolhwa presses him, asking if he remembers their promise. Before he can respond, she mentions the rumors she heard about him and how they led her to him. Yu Hyul cautiously asks what she's heard, and Seolhwa accuses him of being a womanizer and a jerk. Shocked, Yu Hyul denies spreading such nonsense, insisting he only cares about their promise. But now that she's become a master martial artist, Seolhwa asks him once again to marry her. Yu Hyul hesitates and reveals that he's already been spoken for, referring to his involvement in a rental scam. To resolve the matter, they visit Han Kyung, a cunning merchant who had lent Yu Hyul money in the past. Upon seeing them, Kyung mockingly asks if the chaotic sword demon is there to repay his debt. Seolhwa steps in, acknowledging Yu Hyul's debt but chastising Kyung for using it to manipulate her lover. The confrontation creates an awkward tension in the room. Meanwhile, Yu Hyul reflects on how unfair it is that he's been funding Kyung's expenses under the guise of support, only for her to twist the story to paint him as the villain. Now that Seolhwa is here, thinking of him as her equal, Yu Hyul is terrified. He knows she'll eat him alive if she discovers he's been coasting through life while she worked tirelessly to become a master. Desperate, he silently pleads with Kyung to play along. Kyung catches on and decides to help. She tells Seolhwa they merely borrowed Yu Hyul's esteemed name for a small favor. Internally, however, Kyung wonders if Yu Hyul's earlier desperate look was a cry for help to escape Seolhwa. Seolhwa, not one to waste time, asks the cost of the favor. Kyung throws out an absurdly high number, 100,000 yang, including sponsorship and damages. Yu Hyul breathes a sigh of relief, confident Kyung has his back. Smiling, he promises to return with the amount. To his shock, Seolhwa immediately hands over a bag filled with over 100,000 coins. Yu Hyul nervously asks if she's okay with spending so much, but Seolhwa reassures him, saying her money will soon be his since they're getting married. After paying off the debt, Seolhwa asks Kyung if Yu Hyul is free to go. Sensing Kyung's hesitation, she questions whether the money is enough. Kyung admits it is, but, hugging Yu Hyul, slyly declares their relationship special, even calling him her husband. Yu Hyul panics and tries to shove Kyung away, but she whispers for him to play along if he wants her help. Furious, Seolhwa unleashes her lightning arts and warns Kyung to back off from her man. Moments before chaos erupts, Yu Hyul screams at Seolhwa, urging her to calm down and understand the misunderstanding. However, Seolhwa refuses, continuing to warn Kyung to stay away from her man. Desperate, Yu Hyul steps between them and declares that Kyung is someone important to him. Shocked and heartbroken, Seolhwa apologizes and storms out of the room. Realizing she misinterpreted his words, Yu Hyul tries to explain but fails to stop her. After she leaves, Kyung smirks and urges him to thank her for reading the situation well and helping him end an unwanted engagement. While she admits her method was clumsy, she feels proud of herself for helping him. But as she notices Yu Hyul's sullen expression, she asks if this is truly the outcome he wants. Without a word, Yu Hyul exits the merchant building, his dark aura unnerving the villagers as he walks through the streets. His mind is consumed by the look of disappointment on Seolhwa's face, believing he was cheating on her with Kyung. He recalls their first meeting as a servant and noble's daughter and remembers the vow he made to close the gap between them and stand proudly by her side. After all the effort Seolhwa has put into keeping their promise, there's no way Yoo Hyul can let her down now by marrying her as a failure. Resolving to find her and explain himself, he presses forward. On his way, Yoo Hyul overhears two villagers discussing a pale figure running toward the cliff. Judging by the long hair, they assume it's a young woman and fret over how unstable she looks. Fearing the worst, Yoo Hyul rushes to them and demands to know where they saw her. After getting the information he needs, he sprints toward the cliff, praying Seolhwa isn't about to harm herself over his stupidity. Upon arriving, he searches the area until he spots a silver-haired figure standing at the edge of the cliff, staring blankly into the distance. Panicked, Yoo Hyul rushes forward, wraps his arms around the person, and yells that he'll marry her as long as she doesn't do anything drastic. To his shock, the silver-haired person turns around. It's an old man. Confused, the man asks Yoo Hyul if he's seriously proposing to him. Embarrassed, Yoo Hyul quickly apologizes for the mistake and turns to leave. But before he can go, the old man stops him and asks if he truly believes he's the only one feeling uneasy. When Yoo Hyul doesn't respond, the old man advises him to consider Seolhwa's feelings instead of making selfish assumptions. Never underestimate the contents of her heart, the man warns. It's more special than you think. Struck by the old man's wisdom, Yoo Hyul asks who he is. Instead of answering, the old man tells him to face his problems head-on rather than running away. At that moment, the man's granddaughter arrives, scolding him for wandering off, and asks Yoo Hyul to help escort him back home so he can take his medicine. After helping them, Yoo Hyul heads back to his house, reflecting on the old man's words and Seolhwa's feelings. When he arrives, he's startled to find Seolhwa waiting outside. She explains that she discovered his house earlier when she first arrived in the village. Noticing the tear stains on her face, Yoo Hyul asks if she's been crying. Seolhwa denies it, but Yoo Hyul doesn't buy her lie. Determined to set things straight, Yoo Hyul explains his relationship with Kyung, assuring her there's nothing between them. However, Seolhwa interrupts, admitting she believes in his faithfulness but fears he's avoiding marrying her. Remembering the old man's advice, Yoo Hyul decides to be honest. He confesses that he can't marry her yet. Before Seolhwa can leave in disappointment, he grabs her hand and explains his situation, his reliance on the trading company's support, his shabby rented home, and the fact that all the exaggerated rumors about him are untrue. He isn't the extraordinary figure people believe him to be. Though he hasn't yet fulfilled their promise, he vows to work hard and become the man she deserves. He asks her to wait a little longer so he can propose properly and build a future worthy of her. Moved by his sincerity, Seolhwa embraces him tightly and agrees to wait until he's ready for marriage. But moments later, she playfully pushes him against the wall, leans in close, and whispers how special it will be to get married in front of their children. Yoo Hyul tries to object, but Seolhwa's slender leg presses against him, sending his body into overdrive. Nearby, the villagers hear Yoo Hyul's desperate screams, begging Seolhwa to take things slow. Misinterpreting the sounds, rumors spread that the Chaos Sword Demon is battling and overpowering the Star of the Sun and Moon Sword. As gossip swirls, an unidentified martial artist holding a long scroll discusses the rumors with her partner. Though dismissive of the details, one thing is clear. The Chaos Sword Demon defeated the Sun and Moon Sword. Intrigued, the fighter declares her intent to challenge the last star standing in her way and claim the title of the greatest prodigy of their generation. If successful, she vows the title of greatest under heaven will belong to the Sancheon Tang clan. The following day, Seolhwa wakes up early, blushing all over from a night she'll never forget. Sitting on the balcony, untangling her hair and smiling at nothing in particular, her peaceful morning is interrupted by an unexpected visitor at the house's entrance. The man, clearly angry, starts shouting and demanding that the so-called Chaos Sword Demon, Yoo Hyul, come out and settle their differences like men. As the man continues yelling and listing Yoo Hyul's supposed transgressions, an irritated Seolhwa appears behind him, pressing her sword against his throat. Calmly, she asks if it's his death anniversary, offering to speed up the process. Panicked, the middle-aged man raises his hands and begs her to wait, insisting that she introduce herself first. Seolhwa declares herself the lady of the house, and the man, now pale and trembling, identifies himself as the landlord. All his bluster about settling things like men turns out to be a ruse to get Yoo Hyul to come out and pay his overdue rent, as the day marks rent collection. Rolling her eyes, Seolhwa wakes Yoo Hyul and leaves him to handle the landlord while she prepares breakfast. When Yoo Hyul joins the landlord, he apologizes for the dramatic morning, but the man angrily complains about Seolhwa's earlier attempt on his life. Brushing past that, he grumbles about the mess Yoo Hyul left at the inn while he was away, and, more importantly, questions the bloody boar carcass lying nearby. When Yu Hyul casually offers the boar as rent payment, the landlord's temper flares, and he pins Yu Hyul against the wall, ready to strike. Just then, Seolhwa reappears holding a butcher's knife and wearing her signature death stare. Her presence instantly restores order. Calmed down but still curious, the landlord asks about the crazy swordswoman calling herself the lady of the house. Adding his personal observation, he remarks that she's hot as hell. Yu Hyul, unimpressed, reminds the landlord of his promise to stay loyal to his old lady from back in the day. When the landlord realizes Seolhwa's true identity as Baek Seolhwa, the sun and moon sword, he's left speechless. Switching gears, the landlord brings up a rumor spreading across the nearby villages. While he initially dismissed it as nonsense, recent events have made him second guess. When Yu Hyul asks for details, the landlord explains that people are claiming the Chaos Sword Demon hypnotized the Sun and Moon Sword. Infuriated by the absurdity, Yu Hyul does his best to assure the landlord the rumors are false. As the conversation continues, Seolhwa brings out a neatly prepared breakfast and proceeds to spoon-feed Yu Hyul in front of the landlord. The cringeworthy scene nearly causes the landlord to choke as Seolhwa sweetly asks Yu Hyul if the food tastes good. Once he recovers, the landlord warns Yu Hyul that all eyes are now on them, and the union of the two stars is the talk of the town. Seolhwa firmly declares her unwavering love for Yu Hyul, promising to stand by him through thick and thin. This heartfelt declaration motivates Yu Hyul to work harder, be determined to get a proper home for them in the future, and propose to Seolhwa with pride. Tired of witnessing their love-dovey antics, the landlord wraps up the discussion by demanding this month's rent. Later that evening, Yu Hyul and Seolhwa return home after reclaiming their 100,000 nyang from Kyung following the events of the previous day. When the landlord sees the cash, he's overwhelmed and urges Yu Hyul to buy the house outright. However, Yu Hyul declines, explaining that he's saving up to buy a better place. Although the money technically came from Seolhwa, she insists it's now their money, not just hers. Smitten by her sentiment, Yu Hyul agrees to the landlord's terms and promises to pay rent on time while keeping the house Murim-free. Just as things seem to settle, disaster strikes. The house Yu Hyul vowed to protect suddenly bursts into flames. Both he and the landlord stare in disbelief as the fiery chaos unfolds before them. What the freak just happened? Yu Hyul mutters, stunned. As villagers gather to watch the inferno, a figure leaps dramatically from the roof of the burning house. Upon landing, the woman introduces herself as Tang Hai, the Poison Phoenix and heir to the Sanchin Tang clan. With a sinister smile, she declares her intent to assassinate the Chaos Sword Demon, Yu Hyul. While Tang Hai continues boasting about her mission, Seolhwa interrupts with a swift martial arts attack, startling her. Calm but deadly, Seolhwa warns Tang Hai that she doesn't care who she claims to be, but if she values her life, she'd better explain her intentions quickly. Tang Hai, unfazed, smiles and formally greets the Sun and Moon Sword. Ready for battle, she takes her stance, signaling the start of a duel. Moments before the battle begins, Tang Hai confirms the rumors about the two stars of the world and then prepares to unveil her ultimate poison technique. Just as she's about to strike and destroy the Sun and Moon Sword, Seolhwa shocks everyone by ending the fight in an instant, burying 3/4 of Tang Hai's body into the ground. With the fire extinguished, Yu Hyul demands an explanation for why she burned down his house. Instead of answering, Tang Hie first commends his tenacity in forcing her this far, causing Yu Hyul to question if she's completely unhinged. After some nonsensical rambling, Tang Hai calls out her hidden trump card. Without delay, Tang Zhou, the silent killer of the Sancheon Tang clan, emerges from the shadows, only to be immediately slammed into the ground alongside her master by Seolhwa. Satisfied that no more surprises are coming, Yu Hyul repeats his question. Tang Hie lies, claiming she was merely there to punish the wicked unorthodox sect, Yu Hyul, and rescue her fellow righteous ally, Seolhwa. She insists that using fire was just a basic tactical strategy, downplaying the crime entirely. Annoyed by her dismissive attitude, the landlord yells at her, demanding compensation for his house. Ignoring the landlord, Tang Hai accuses Yu Hyul of taking Seolhwa's parents hostage and hypnotizing her into submission. She even suggests the fire was divine retribution for his past atrocities. Yu Hyul, exasperated by her absurdity, points out the irony in her earlier attempt to kill Seolhwa while claiming to want to save her. Flustered, Tang Hai lies again, saying she was caught up in the heat of battle. At that moment, her partner, Tang Leo, spills the truth. Tang Hai's real target has always been Seolhwa. Confused, Yu Hyul asks why Tang Hie, someone from the Orthodox sect, would go after Seolhwa, also of the Orthodox sect. Tang Leo then reveals Tang Hie's most embarrassing secret. Her grudge against Seolhwa began 2 years ago when Seolhwa humiliated her in the Murim tournament by beating her soundly. Ever since, Tang Hai has been desperate to avenge her loss. only to realize that confronting Seolhwa head-on is far more challenging than expected. Now, after failing to defeat Seolhwa, Tang Hae declares her intent to regain her honor by taking Yu Hyeol's head and saving Seolhwa. Unimpressed, Yu Hyeol asks Seolhwa if she even knows Tang Hae. When Seolhwa replies that she doesn't, Tang Hae loses her temper and rants about Seolhwa's arrogance toward everyone except Yu Hyeol. Frustrated, she signals Tang Leo to end things quickly. With her master's permission, Tang Leo frees herself from the ground, dashes past Yu Hyeol with a disdainful side-eye, and disappears. Moments later, she returns with a hostage, whom Tang Hae proudly introduces as her final trump card. Amidst the confusion, Tang Hae offers Yu Hyeol a chance to surrender before something terrible happens. Bewildered, Yu Hyeol demands to know who she's taken hostage. Tang Hae indignantly calls him ungrateful for not recognizing his mother. This leaves Yu Hyeol even more confused, as he explains that his biological mother died when he was 5. The captive woman, clearly flustered, shouts that her son's name is Yu Hyun, not Yu Hyeol. The villagers quickly recognize her as entirely unrelated to Yu Hyeol, and she sheepishly asks the innkeeper for help out of this embarrassing situation. Realizing her mistake, Tang Hae throws a tantrum and accuses Seolhwa of lowering herself by siding with an unorthodox punk like Yu Hyeol. Through tears, she insists that the captive must be Yu Hyeol's mother and threatens to stab the woman if Yu Hyeol doesn't surrender. To her surprise, the hostage starts tearfully calling Yu Hyeol her son and begs him to comply. Frustrated, Yu Hyeol tries to calm everyone down, only for Tang Hae to accuse him of abandoning his only mother. The clueless villagers, overhearing the commotion, mistakenly believe the woman is truly Yu Hyeol's mother. They begin gossiping, calling Yu Hyeol a heartless demon for not caring about his parents. Despite Yu Hyeol's attempts to explain, the rumors spread like wildfire. Furious, Yu Hyeol calls Tang Hae a weird little brat with strange hair and mocks her for pretending to be from a prestigious clan while spouting nonsense. His insults hit a nerve, leaving Tang Hae visibly shaken. Desperate to salvage her pride, she uproots herself from the ground, declares Yu Hyeol a scrawny brat, and hurls poison darts at him. Seolhwa effortlessly blocks the darts and challenges Tang Hae. Smirking, Tang Hae commends Seolhwa's reflexes, but points out she missed one dart. Before Seolhwa can react, the dart strikes Yu Hyeol, knocking him out instantly. Almost immediately, Seolhwa starts regretting her sluggish reactions to Tang Hae's attacks, as she calls Hyeol's name several times to confirm he's okay. Just as she's about to give up hope, Yu Hyeol opens his eyes and assures her that he's a-okay. Seolhwa hugs him so tightly that even Hyeol starts feeling guilty for worrying her unnecessarily. Soon after, the landlord asks Hyeol if he's truly fine, as he seems pretty down earlier, but then Hyeol says it's just a needle prick after all, so there's no real damage done. Just then, the crazy dwarf Bayach screams at the top of her lungs and assures Hyeol that he's as good as dead already, since she already infused the needle with the Sancheon clan's ultimate poison, 100 fragrance root acid. In any moment from now, the poison will spread through his body and reach his Dantian spots. Once that happens, the poison will infect the Dantian and multiply itself through Hyeol's internal energy reserves, causing supreme agony and death. In other words, the more internal energy Hyeol has, the more deadly the poison is. After rambling on for several seconds about how the poison kills masters, Tang Hae waits for Hyeol to cry out in agony. However, after a brief pause, nothing happens as Hyeol still only feels a slight sting. Soon, she starts doubting herself when she finds Seolhwa and Hyeol chatting about treating his needle wound. When she's finally had enough, she checks out the poison vial to see if she truly brought the right poison for the mission, seeing as Hyeol still seems very fine. As soon as reality dawns on her, she pricks herself with one of her poison-tipped needles to see if she's just tripping. Shortly afterward, the poison takes effect in her body and she collapses, confusing both Hyeol and Seolhwa in the process. Hours later, Tang Hae finally comes to and finds herself in a weird house wearing a weird dress. Seconds after waking up, she throws a tantrum and asks Hyeol, who's near her, to tell her where she is. Hyeol tells her they brought her to the village doctor's place when they found her writhing in severe pain from the poison she infused into her body. Now that she's back on her feet, Hyeol asks if she still wants to kill him or not. At that point, Tang Hae realizes that the poison is real, but then again, since the only way to counter the effects is to achieve extreme control of one's internal energy perfectly, it must mean Hyeol has reached the advanced level technique requiring internal energy rivaling a sect leader's. To keep the convo going, she asks Hyeol why he saved her, and Hyeol says that although Seolhwa was furious at him for doing that, he only did it because they had some scores to settle. By then, Hae realizes that she might have misunderstood the entire situation, seeing as the mighty sun and moon sword fell to him in a duel to the death. Upon realizing that Hyeol might be a righteous doofus after all, she concludes he must be trying to drive her out before she ends up like him. With all that, Tang Hai decides to apologize to Seolhwa for thinking she was being brainwashed or kept hostage as the stupid rumors said. Although shocked by her response, Hyul still moves on to ask about her family's involvement in this charade of hers. To avoid putting her family name to shame, Tang Hai assures him she's acting alone and will take full responsibility for her stupidity. Hyul asks to make sure she can handle the consequences alone, and Tang Hai warns him not to underestimate her. With that, Hyul asks if she understands that she'd have to pay back 100,000 yang. And while both parties label the money differently, Tang Hye agrees to do the needful. Once they get to an agreement, Hyul proceeds to collect his money in person just like she wanted. To do this, Hyul takes Tang Hai to the Pengwol Inn and makes her start work there as an attendant. After doing the hardest work of her life in just 5 minutes, Tang Hai confronts Hyul and asks him why she's doing such back-wrenching work. Well, Hyul says she needed help, so this is what he could come up with. With Seolhwa in his arms, Hyul menacingly asks if she'd want to do something else. But then again, Tang Hai knows her place immediately and continues working. Soon after taking care of that, Hyul politely asks Seolhwa to get off him since he's fine now, but then Seolhwa refuses to do so since she doesn't know what Tang Hye might do next. Hyul assures her that Tang Hye is working to pay for her mistakes, so they shouldn't be worried about her. Seolhwa then promises to handle matters her way next time so he doesn't get hurt. After seeing how uncomfortable Hyul looked, Seolhwa asks if he feels that awkward with her on his lap like that. To avoid incurring her wrath, Hyul holds his wife tightly and snuggles her in the cutest way possible to give the other customers a cringy show to watch. After the show, the duo wonders where Tang Hai's partner Geo ran off. At that instant, Geo's seen on the streets complaining about how stressful it is to wear a mask to cover her real face. After acknowledging Seolhwa's power, she removes the mask, reveals her beautiful face, and promises to see her rival, Yoo Hyul, on her next visit to the Six-Clan village. Given how much Jianghu, the city where he grew up, has taken from him, Yoo Hyul resolves to become stronger so he can stop failing to protect what's precious to him. To achieve this, he trains under Seolhwa's supervision during the day and seeks her feedback at the end of each session. During one such session, Yoo Hyul removes his shirt, exposing his abs, which leaves Seolhwa struggling not to stare at his well-defined physique. After finishing his training for the day, he asks Seolhwa for her thoughts on his regimen. However, before she responds, Hyul reflects on the last time he asked for her opinion on his strength. Even if she tried to be kind, he knew he was pathetic, incapable of even basic skills like proper breath control. Bracing for criticism, Hyul is taken aback when Seolhwa compliments his well-trained external energy, his muscles. After a brief, affectionate moment, she shifts to discussing his internal energy. To avoid revealing his terrible state, Hyul claims he plans to focus on that separately in the future. Back at the inn, Seolhwa promises to help her boyfriend circulate his QE and improve his internal energy as a true energy master. She is unaware, however, that Hyul has no internal energy to begin with. Despite admitting she's never done true energy training with someone else, Seolhwa urges Hyul to align his dantians with hers to give it a try. Encouraged, Hyul hopes to gain some internal energy through this process. However, when he considers the locations of her upper, middle, and lower dantians, her face, chest, and pelvis, he concludes that Jianghu is truly a place where survival of the fittest rules. As they begin the ritual, Tang Hye, the unpredictable newcomer, bursts into the room, blowing the door off its hinges and yelling at the duo for attempting true energy training without her. When she sees their awkward position, she jumps to conclusions, accusing them of undressing for some other purpose. Moments later, the innkeeper, who is also the landlord, arrives looking for Tang Hai. Spotting the destroyed door and disheveled room, he scolds Seolhwa and Hyul, calling them ungrateful brats for ruining the place he kindly rented to them. Annoyed by the chaos, Hyul, who feels he should be the one angry, grows increasingly frustrated. Amidst the commotion, Kyung, the merchant leader, arrives and calms the situation. She then informs Hyul about trouble brewing at his home. Initially suspicious, Seolhwa questions whether Kyung is there to cause more problems, but Kyung presents an enticing proposal, a chance to earn urgent funds to find a new place to stay. Accepting her offer, Hyul, Seolhwa, Tang Hye, and Kyung travel through the mountainside toward their new point of interest. Along the way, their caravan is ambushed by bandits, who order the riders to halt and surrender their belongings. While the bandits intimidate the riders, one ventures to the back of the carriage and opens the door, only to find Hyul, Kyung, Seolhwa, and Tang Hye staring him down. Startled, the bandit has his ponytail cut off and flees, terrified. Shortly after, the group captures the remaining bandits and ties them up. Once the captives are secured, Kyung explains that the real threat is a group of Green Forest bandits entrenched nearby. As a branch of the Green Forest main headquarters, they've become skilled martial artists and pose a significant danger. Though they avoid drawing the government's attention, they've grown increasingly violent, attacking travelers along this path. Kyung reveals she hired Seolhwa and Hyul to protect the caravan because it carries valuable cargo. Hyul, who accepted the job for the pay, remains puzzled about Tang Hai's presence. Tang Hai defends herself, insisting she can't stand by while innocent people suffer at the hands of villains. She declares she'll assist for a sum of 100,000 nyang. Annoyed, Hyul questions her logic, sparking an argument. Their bickering is cut short when the rider signals the caravan to prepare for an impending attack by the Green Forest bandits. Determined to prove her worth, Tang Hai steps outside, ready to face the bandits alone. Spotting her exit, the bandits assume she's the strongest warrior among the group. Despite her initial bravado, Tang Hai becomes visibly nervous upon seeing their strength, but loudly declares they shouldn't expect mercy from her. Moments later, Seolhwa emerges and tells Hyul to stay put while she takes care of the bandits in seconds. Tang Hai protests, claiming the bandits as her prey, but Hyul urges her to stop distracting Seolhwa. Frustrated, Tang Hai arms herself with explosive darts and fires them recklessly at the bandits. Her impulsive attack destroys the cliff they're standing on, causing Seolhwa to punish her by striking her head with the flat of her sword. Seconds later, the crumbling cliff collapses and causes a landslide which sends everyone, Kyung's group, the Green Forest bandits, and their party, tumbling down into the valley below. Meanwhile, the Green Forest bandit chief receives word from a subordinate about Kyung's caravan being protected by formidable guards. Though concerned about the guard's strength, the chief dismisses the worry, explaining that he only sent the vanguard to assess the enemy. Confident reinforcements from the Green Forest main base will soon arrive. He believes the situation is under control. However, his mood changes when he hears the vanguard has been wiped out. Before he can commend Kyung's guards, he's informed that both the guards and the target were wiped out as well. In the aftermath of the chaos, Hyul awakens to find himself awkwardly sprawled over Kyung's slender, wet body, with Seolhwa nowhere in sight. A few hours before their journey, Kyung discusses hiring the Chaos Sword Demon as her escort with her subordinate. The subordinate hesitates, asking questions to ensure she truly trusts someone from the unorthodox sect. Surprised by his doubt, Kyung explains that trust isn't a concept she associates with humans. As she reflects on the true meaning of trust, the narrative shifts to the present. Kyung is now drowning in the river beneath the cliff that Tang Hee blew up earlier. Fortunately, Hyul risks his life to save her unconscious body from drowning. Once on the riverbank, Hyul curses Tang Hee for causing the landslide and covers Kyung with his coat before setting her down. Assessing their situation, he considers himself lucky the landslide didn't bury them. Despite this, he fears they might be stranded, as starting a fire would attract the Green Forest bandits. Thinking of Seolhwa, Hyul convinces himself she is safe since she's far stronger than him. For now, he focuses on finding a way down the mountain without hindering her. Just as he resolves to act, the Green Forest bandits ambush him. Devastated and outnumbered, Hyul arms himself, demanding to know who they are. The bandits, noticing his wound, coat, and rough face, mistakenly identify him as the infamous Chaos Sword Demon. Murmuring among themselves, they confirm his identity and commend him for capturing Kyung, leader of the Eternal Trading Company. They then demand he hand her over to them. Seizing the opportunity, Hyul plays along, pretending to be the reinforcement their chief hired. Although inwardly panicked that they may see through his ruse, the bandits seem convinced. They speculate about the masterful technique he must have used to cause the landslide, but Hyul, clueless, lets them speculate without commenting. He shifts the focus by asking if they found any survivors from the merchants, particularly someone in white clothing. The bandits suggest another group might have encountered such a person and promise to report back immediately if they find anyone. When one bandit inquires about his association with the Eternal Trading Company, Hyul fabricates a story. He claims he posed as an escort to double-cross them after they insulted him with a low offer. Fortunately, the bandits believe his lie. However, just as Hyul begins to relax, Kyung regains consciousness. Having overheard everything, she immediately lashes out at Hyul, berating him for his supposed betrayal. The bandits, oblivious to the truth, admire her realistic reaction and praise Hyul's cunning. Hyul, desperate to maintain the act, decides to leverage Kyung's fiery demeanor to make the story more convincing. As she continues to insult him, the bandits laugh at her expense, further cementing their belief in Hyul's deception. Before long, they lead him to their military fortress, promising a warm welcome. Hyul, now deeply concerned about escaping with Kyung, considers his options. Thinking of what Seolhwa would do, he pauses and announces his need to practice breath control. The bandits, assuming he must recover from using an ultimate technique, agree but insist on guarding him while he rests. Annoyed, Hyul dismisses their help, claiming he can't entrust his safety to weaklings. He convinces them to let him train alone, though they still insist on watching over Kyung. Frustrated, he insults them, muttering remarks that also anger Kyung. Once he secures a safe distance, Hyul frees Kyung from her bindings and compliments her acting. Confused initially, Kyung realizes he's been pretending and begrudgingly goes along with the charade. Still, she questions why he didn't simply defeat the bandits outright. Hyul explains that fighting would have drawn reinforcements, and his priority was protecting her, so deception was the safer option. Though she understands his reasoning, Kyung suggests they head down the mountain. Hyul insists on accompanying her only halfway, as he must stay to rescue Seolhwa. Kyung protests, warning of the dangers she'll face alone. Just then, they overhear bandits discussing how Seolhwa was captured by their reinforcement. Shocked but focused, Hyul refuses to abandon her, citing a promise he made. Kyung challenges him, questioning if his promise outweighs their contract. But Hyul remains firm. Realizing his determination, Kyung sighed and started removing her clothes. A startled Hyul demands to know why, but she does not explain. Instead, she urges him to strip as well. As the merchant leader of the textiles sector, Kyung quickly crafts disguises for them both. Though flustered, Hyul complies, donning the bandit attire. In their new disguises, the two prepare to infiltrate the fortress, while Seolhwa waits in her dungeon, hoping Hyul will come to save her. When they arrive at the two bandits guarding the fortress gates, Hyul concocts a flimsy excuse to make the guards recognize him and Kyung. Unfortunately, the bandits aren't fools, and they bluntly tell him that wearing a green headscarf and walking with a pretty girl doesn't make him believable. Realizing his plan is falling apart, Hyul begins to panic, unsure of what to do next. Just then, Kyung steps forward and slaps both bandits hard, berating them for their disrespect. She immediately launches into a tirade, scolding them for failing to recognize the reinforcements their chief requested from the main base. Taken aback, the guards stammer, asking if she's truly the reinforcement they've been waiting for. Kyung doubles down, claiming she followed her husband, Hyul, to ensure the country bumpkins didn't mess things up. Her performance is so scathing and authoritative that the bandits soon drop to their knees, begging for forgiveness. After maintaining her act for a few moments longer, Kyung agrees to forgive them, on the condition that they lead her and Hyul into the stronghold. Cowed, the bandits quickly complied, showing them the way. On the way, the bandits complain about the sorry state of the fortress, explaining that the higher-ups have been raiding more often to cover repair costs. When Kyung and Hyul see how dilapidated the place is, they ask what caused such destruction. One of the guards reveals that a massive burst of blue sword energy had obliterated the mountain and main building. Hearing the term sword energy, Hyul immediately thinks of Seolhwa and grows pale at the thought of what she might have done. Kyung notices his change in demeanor and asks if such a person could exist in the mountainous region. When Hyul doesn't respond, she presses him about why he suddenly looks so pale. Hyul, feeling a growing sense of responsibility, resolves to protect Kyung, calling her the merchant leader. This unexpected declaration surprises Kyung, who blushes and mutters incoherently as they reach the storage and prison area of the stronghold. Once there, Hyul abruptly knocks out the bandit escorting them, leaving him groveling on the ground and bleeding. Kyung comments on the sorry state of the unconscious bandit, and the duo takes the prison keys to check the first cell they find. Hyul foolishly starts shouting Seolhwa's name, heedless of the noise he's making. Despite Kyung's pleas to lower his voice, Hyul persists, demanding to know if the prisoner inside is okay. To their shock, the person in the cell is none other than Tang Hee, the brat responsible for their predicament. Smirking, she greets them and wastes no time mocking the unorthodox punk who saved her. After the awkward reunion, they untie Tang Hai, who then explains that she hasn't seen Seolhwa in any of the fortress's cells. She adds that the other prisoners were quickly released since they weren't valuable for ransom. Hyul concludes that Seolhwa is too strong to have been captured by these weaklings and suspects the entire setup was orchestrated for him. Realizing the danger, Kyung urges them to move before the patrol returns. Tang Hai assures them there's no need to worry about a patrol, having overheard that an alarm will ring if any prison doors are improperly opened. Before the trio can react, the fortress's emergency bell blares and the entire bandit force surrounds the prison area. The bandit chief steps forward, mocking them for falling into his trap. He sneers, claiming he knew the righteous orthodox fools would show up to deliver justice. As Hyul mutters incoherently, Kyung tells Tang Hai to use her explosive darts to clear the bandits out. Unfortunately, Tang Hai admits she lost her weaponized code in the landslide, adding that she'd never have been caught if she still had it. Frustrated by Tang Hai's excuses, Kyung starts arguing with her. Amid their bickering, Hyul interrupts, asking how they plan to escape. Both women scoff, questioning why he's even thinking of escape when they could fight. Just then, the bandits recognize Hyul as the Chaos Sword Demon. Terrified, they begin begging for their lives. Kyung and Tang Hie give Hyul their blessing to handle the small fry, but Hyul hesitates, unsure of what to do. The chief, realizing who Hyul is, grows nervous and begins doubting whether it is truly his trap or theirs. Tang Hai worsens the situation by urging everyone to fight for their lives if they want to survive. Internally panicking, Hyol shakily threatens the bandits, ordering them to let the group go. His threats seem to work as the bandits consider retreating. Unfortunately, the reinforcement the chief had been waiting for, Munghobu Wuseok, arrives and restores the bandits' confidence. Wuseok confronts Hyol, offering him a chance to join forces. He promises Hyol a share of Kyung and Tang Hee's ransom money, emphasizing that money is the only thing worth trusting in this world. Kyung, outraged, asks if Hyol is seriously considering breaking their contract. Wuseok silences her, insisting the decision is Hyol's alone. After a tense pause, Wuseok extends his hand for a handshake. Just when it seems Hyol might take the deal, he slaps Wuseok's hand away. Hyol condemns martial artists who exploit their strength to take from others, and declares that his purpose is to protect his people. Before the situation can escalate further, Seolwa bursts into the prison room, furious and deadly. She demands an explanation from Hyol, particularly about what he means by his people. After stunning the useless bandits with her overwhelming murderous intent, Seolwa rushes to embrace the man of her life, bombarding him with questions to ensure he's unhurt. Hyol reassures her that he's fine and asks where she's been all this time. Seolhwa explains that she's been scouring the strongholds and watchtowers in the area, cleaning up anything annoying she encountered along the way. Meanwhile, Tang Haye, initially terrified by the intense killing intent Seolhwa exuded earlier, calms down upon realizing this is just Seolhwa being her normal self. Jealousy flares in Kyung, who wonders if Seolhwa is flaunting her relationship or if it's just her imagination. Tang Hye, however, is simply relieved they survived, until Seolhwa threatens to kill her for endangering Hyol again. With her killing intent still palpable, Seolhwa promises to eliminate everyone in the room except Hyol and herself. Hyol quickly reminds her of their mission, prompting Seolhwa to refocus, though she resolves to teach the bandits an unforgettable lesson. Despite Hyol's attempts to calm her down, she remains unrelenting. Their tense moment is interrupted when Wuseok attacks Seolhwa from behind with his deadly axe. Reacting swiftly, she blocks the attack with her sword. After recognizing her as the Sun and Moon sword, Wuseok admires her beauty, but smugly notes how tired she must be from her trek through the mountains. Assuming her weakened ki circulation makes her an easy target, Wuseok launches multiple attacks while hurling insults about her body and limbs. As the fight intensifies, the bandit chief brags to Hyol about Wuseok's strength as a supreme master, attempting to demoralize him. Watching Seolhwa fend off the relentless assaults, Hyol grows concerned for her and considers stepping in to help. However, before he can act, the battle escalates to such dangerous levels that interference becomes impossible. At one point, Wuseok, enraged by Seolhwa's composure, unleashes a series of even stronger attacks. Seolhwa blocks them all, her calm expression only infuriating Wuseok further. As round 2 begins, Seolhwa admits to Hyol that she's tired and needs a moment to regulate her ki. Wuseok, boiling with rage, vows to kill them all. Unleashing his full strength, he channels a lifetime of mediocrity into a single devastating attack meant to end everything. Recognizing the danger, Hyol warns Seolhwa to be careful. Calmly, she tells Hyol she'll need his help with breath control, true energy, and guidance. Hyol agrees, promising to support her as long as she keeps her focus ahead. The massive strike, powerful enough to split a 1,000-pound boulder, hurtles towards Seolhwa. Knowing she can't kill Wuseok without inciting a bandit war, Seolhwa resolves to break him mentally instead. Using her ultimate technique, Twilight's Dawn, she splits the prison cave in half and knocks Wuseok unconscious. The resulting explosion causes the entire prison structure to begin collapsing. With time running out, Hyol grabs Kyung while Seolhwa hauls them out to safety. Tang Haye, refusing to be left behind, clings to Seolhwa's feet as the entire bandit stronghold crumbles. Hours later, after reaching safety, Hyol presents Kyung with the precious cargo she was delivering to her contact. He explains that Seolhwa went out of her way to recover and protect it. Grateful for the effort, Kyung asks where Seolhwa is. Hyol replies that she's busy treating survivors buried under the rubble, with Tang Hai assisting her. Regarding the chief and Wuseok, Seolhwa shattered their dantians and restrained them separately, ensuring they were unable to cause further harm. Kyung, recognizing the financial losses they've suffered at the hands of these bandits, plans to collect the bounty on them to recoup some damages. Now relieved her cargo is intact, Kyung lets Hyol off the hook. After hearing Hyol babble about one of Seolhwa's warnings, Kyung grows worried over baseless assumptions. She asks him what he would have done if he had to face Wuseok, given his supposed equal strength to Seolhwa. Hyol lies, admitting it would have been a bad matchup for him. Kyung then questions why he didn't hand her over to Wuseok earlier, as it might have been more beneficial for him. Confused, Hyol reminds her of their promise. He vowed to protect her and was simply fulfilling his part of the deal. Hearing this, Kyung's mood brightens, and she bursts into laughter, teasing him about the caravan. After some playful banter, she turns to Yahello, blushing, and confesses that she can finally trust him. Moving on, Kyung insists they get the caravan moving, emphasizing that wasting time is a grave sin for merchants. In her usual spirited manner, she playfully sentences Yahello to death by the authority of the nation's law. After the entire ordeal, Kyung and her party return to the six-clan village to deliver the bodies of Woo-seok and the bandit chief. Upon inspecting the corpses, Elder Hyun-sung, the second in command of the county, commends Kyung's trading company for their efforts and promises to ensure the bounty is delivered soon. Kyung thanks the elder for his support, but Seolhwa notices Hyol's uneasy demeanor and asks what's wrong. Hyol admits that he feels awkward being near the government building and is considering waiting outside. At that moment, Elder Ji-hyun, the top official of the county, overhears their conversation and blames the accursed government non-interference policy for preventing him from apprehending scum like Hyol on the spot. Even when his subordinate highlights Hyol's contributions in capturing one of the Green Forest's most notorious criminals, Ji-hyun refuses to listen, instead yelling and insisting they remember the atrocities committed by the Chaos Sword Demon. Before the situation escalates, Kyung steps in and informs Ji-hyun that she has no intention of resisting Hyol. However, if Ji-hyun provokes him further, it could spell trouble for everyone. Taking the hint, Ji-hyun grudgingly backs down and invites the group to dine at the in-house restaurant. Inside, Hyol expresses his discomfort about dining in such a place. Kyung takes the opportunity to explain the non-interference policy, which, though once a tradition, was solidified into law by the imperial decree. While she understands the government's frustration at letting a criminal walk free, especially in their presence, she also sees why the policy exists. Since the Great Demon Cult War, Murrum's influence has grown substantially, granting them control over taxes and military power in their territories. This has created a chaotic era where two nations coexist under one emperor. Their conversation shifts to how Murrum contributors receive leniency compared to ordinary criminals. Unless someone commits banditry or directly attacks the government, interference is prohibited. Before the discussion ends, Kyung warns Hyol to stay hidden the next day when they deliver the precious cargo to its recipient. When Hyol asks why, Kyung explains that the recipient is a dragon. Clarifying her metaphor, she explains that in this context, dragon refers to martial artists who have reached the pinnacle of their craft, capable of manifesting internal energy into QI. Those who reach such heights young are known as phoenixes in the Orthodox Murrum and are revered as the next generation of martial elites. Hearing this, Hyol marvels at how incredible dragons must be. Kyung, however, dismisses the titles as mere labels, implying they're not as special as they seem. At this point, Tang Hae, the group's self-proclaimed fool, proudly announces that she's one of the youngest phoenixes, known as the Poison Phoenix. Hyol's excitement immediately sours, and he agrees with Kyung that the titles are meaningless. Offended, Tang Hae hurls insults at them until Kyung silences her to reveal the identity of their contact. She informs them that the martial dragon they'll meet is called the Future of Mount Hua, a figure she advises them not to take lightly. Seeking more details, Kyung asks Tang Hae if she knows anything about the martial dragon. After some nonsensical babbling, Tang Hae declares the man is anything but ordinary. Hearing this, Seolhwa and the others jokingly conclude that if someone as unusual as Tang Hae considers him abnormal, they're in for a treat. Tang Hae, realizing their jest, becomes furious and rants further. As the night wears on, Kyung ends the argument and takes the group to an inn to rest. At the inn's reception desk, Kyung requests 4 private rooms. However, an irritated Seolhwa interrupts, slamming her fist on the desk and demanding 2 double rooms instead, threatening the receptionist if she refuses. Intimidated, the receptionist quickly complies. Later, the group retires to their rooms, Seolhwa and Hyol in one, and Kyung with Tang Hae in the other. After bathing, Tang Hae notices Kyung standing near the wall separating their room from Hyol's, attempting to eavesdrop on the couple. When Tang Hae jokingly asks if Kyung is a rebellious teenager, Kyung angrily tells her to mind her business. Unbothered, Tang Hae flops onto the bed and advises Kyung to get some sleep. Kyung ignores her and continues eavesdropping. Meanwhile, in the other room, Seolhwa steps out of the bath wearing a revealing robe. Noticing Hyol's flustered reaction, she reminds him of his promise to help her with breath control in the bath and asks why he didn't show up. Feeling his resolve weakened, Hyol nervously asks why she's dressed so seductively. Seolhwa explains that her clothes are drying and she borrowed the robe temporarily. Leaning in, she pins Hyol against the wall, hugs him tightly, and tells him to decide their next move since she belongs to him. Summoning his courage, Hyol assures her that he loves everything she does for him. They embrace and reaffirm their love for each other. Back in Kyung's room, her eavesdropping is interrupted when something crashes against the window. Turning to investigate, she spots a messenger owl stealing the cargo meant for delivery. Panicking, she screams, raising the alarm. Seolhwa and Hyeol's moment is rudely interrupted by the noise. Frustrated, Seolhwa channels her ki and blasts the owl out of the sky. As the package plummets to the ground, Hyeol leaps out of the window, catches it midair, and lands awkwardly. To his dismay, Hyeol is surrounded by guards, their swords drawn. Looking around, he realizes he accidentally fell on Elder Jihyun, who lies unconscious. Without hesitation, the guards raise an alarm, alerting the county of Hyeol's attack on Elder Jihyun. The commotion grows so loud that even the bald prisoner in the jail wonders if his next prison buddy has reached the county. Even after trying to explain the truth to the officials out to convict him, Hyeol is bound and taken to Baldy's jail cell. At the entrance to the cell, the guard listens to Hyeol's pleas until he loses patience. To shut him up, the guard tells him to stop making excuses and focus on the fact that Elder Jihyun is still unconscious because of him. Hyeol apologizes once more and attempts to explain himself again. Still, the guard shoves him into the cell, warning him to stay away from Baldy, his cellmate, who happens to be another Murim contributor, or face the consequences. Surprised, Hyeol looks around for his cellmate and only notices him when Baldy asks if he's okay. Without waiting for a response, Baldy urges him to share his story. Hyeol hesitates, unsure how to deal with this peculiar man, but freezes when he notices Baldy's head glowing like the sun. Seeing Hyeol's confusion, Baldy introduces himself as Gwangdu, a disciple of Manhwa. Shortly after, Gwangdu recognizes Hyeol's face and asks if he is the infamous Chaos Sword Demon. Just as Hyeol is about to answer, the scene reveals a furious Seolhwa, who is determined to rescue her fiancé no matter what. Seolhwa, seething over Hyeol's imprisonment, is ready to go AWOL and destroy the nation in retaliation. Kyung steps in as the voice of reason, urging her to calm down. She argues that storming into a government building is taking things too far, especially since making herself an enemy of the nation would harm Hyeol more than help him. Kyung pleads with Seolhwa to think of Hyeol and to trust that there's a reason he surrendered so easily. Reluctantly, Seolhwa calms down and acknowledges Kyung's logic. However, she warns that she won't hold back if a single hair on Hyeol's head is harmed. Kyung promises to clear up the misunderstanding while urging Seolhwa to lay low with Tang Hye. Speaking of Tang Hye, Kyung quickly realizes the brat is no longer in the room and throws a tantrum. Unbeknownst to them, Tang Hye is already hatching another of her reckless plans. This time, to break Hyeol out of prison and sneak him out under everyone's noses. Proud of her genius idea, she moves, incapacitating the guards outside the prison. Meanwhile, Gwangdu, or Gwan for short, listens to Hyeol's story and becomes the first person to truly understand him. Hyeol, in turn, is shocked that Gwan, a member of the Orthodox sect, trusts his words instead of blindly believing the rumors. Gwan explains that he doesn't believe in rumors and sees all martial artists, orthodox or unorthodox, as pursuing the same path. At this moment, Hyeol realizes why Gwangdu's Taoist name includes the character for light. After some hesitation, Hyeol asks why Gwan is in jail. Embarrassed, Gwan admits that he punched Hyunsung, the county magistrate, after an incident involving a rampaging horse that panicked upon seeing the glare from his bald head. Hyeol looks at Gwangdu's shiny head and immediately understands why the horse freaked out. Despite his embarrassment, Gwan adds that his punishment ends today, after which he will retrieve an item for his sect leader. As Hyeol pieces things together, he realizes that Gwangdu is Kyung's contact. Before he can say anything, an explosion outside interrupts them. Moments later, Tang Hye bursts in, declaring herself Hyeol's secret savior and demanding 10,000 yang as payment. Hyeol urges her to keep her voice down, but Tang Hye dismisses his concern, bragging that she's already knocked out all the guards with acupoint strikes. Recognizing her, Gwangdu calls out Tang Hye, and the two immediately start bickering. After some heated exchanges, Gwangdu asks why she's rescuing Hyeol. Tang Hye refuses to admit she owes Hyeol, which would hurt her pride. She frees Hyeol from his restraints and tells him to leave the county fast before Elder Jihyun retaliates. As they prepare to leave, Tang Hye casually mentions the Sun and Moon Sword wreaking havoc in search of Hyeol. This name alone enrages Gwangdu, who emits a deadly aura. He asks if the Sun and Moon Sword is truly in the county. Before Hyeol can respond, Tang Hye blurts out that Hyeol is her fiancé. This revelation causes Gwangdu to redirect his anger at Hyeol and attempt to punch him. Hyeol narrowly dodges, demanding to know why Gwangdu is attacking him. Apologizing for his outburst, Gwangdu explains that while he has no issue with Hyeol as the Chaos Sword Demon, knowing he is engaged to the Sun and Moon Sword changes everything. With a deadly glint in his eye, Gwangdu declares that they must now fight to the death. If you're wondering what Seolhwa did to make Gwangdu so furious, here's a little backstory. During the final stages of the Murim competition, Seolhwa was matched up against a young Gwangdu. She defeated him so thoroughly that he temporarily lost the ability to speak after the fight. Back then, the one thing Guangdu cherished more than his life was the few strands of hair left on his nearly bald head. Despite the humiliating defeat at the hands of the overwhelmingly strong Seolhwa, Guangdu had no regrets as he managed to protect his precious hair. But his relief was short-lived. Just as the fight ended, Seolhwa grabbed him by his hair and asked the referee if the match was over. Guangdu tried desperately to signal her not to touch his hair, but his inability to speak left him helpless. Ignoring his silent pleas, Seolhwa casually cut one of his precious strands, leaving Guangdu screaming internally in despair. As he sat there, devastated, Guangdu thought of his people back home, Baeko and Elder Yeonmu, and dreaded how they would react to his disgrace. And as if that wasn't enough, Seolhwa took her bullying further by yanking the remaining strands from his scalp, leaving him completely bald. The sunlight glaring off his bare head was the final blow to his pride, and all he could do was let out a silent, desperate scream. From that moment on, Guangdu swore vengeance on Seolhwa, now known as the Sun and Moon Sword. Fast forward to the present, and the enraged Sun and Moon Sword warrior, Seolhwa, is seen rushing toward the government office, realizing how vague Kyung's plan is. Kyung, who is beside her, begs her to remain calm, even if Guangdu acted first. But Seolhwa ignores her, her mind focused solely on her beloved Hyol. Meanwhile, after recounting another one of his sob stories to Hyol and Tang Hae, Guangdu loses control and blows up the prison cell in a fit of rage, forcing the two Nimrods to flee for their lives. His sole aim now is to make Seolhwa feel the same pain he felt when she yanked out his hair, and to do that, he plans to take his revenge on her fiancé. As they flee, Tang Hae asks Hyol why Guangdu is suddenly acting this way, and Hyol explains that it's all because of Seolhwa. She then questions why Hyol doesn't just deal with him directly, to which Hyol responds by asking her how he's supposed to do that. Tang Hae, misunderstanding his hesitation, urges him to run while she handles the rogue Taoist. Perplexed, Hyol asks why she's helping him, but Tang Hae brushes him off, instead describing the location of his clothes and weapon. Still confused, Hyol thanks her and hurries off. Shortly after he leaves, a legendary matchup unfolds between the dragon, Tang Hae, and the phoenix, Guangdu, with both fighters eager to prove their strength. Meanwhile, Hyol arrives at the location Tang Hae described, and after searching high and low, finds his belongings. Snuggling his warm coat and sword, he steels himself to locate the merchant leader's item. However, before he can proceed, Elder Hyunsung appears and demands an explanation for Hyol's presence. Just as Hyunsung is about to speak, an explosion from the ongoing fight knocks Hyol off his feet. In the fight, Tang Hae unleashes her true poison dance art, but Guangdu skillfully counters it with his 24 stances of plum blossom swordsmanship technique. He then gives her one final chance to step aside, declaring that he has no business with her. His only target is Seolhwa's fiancé, Yu Hyol, whom he calls out to face him directly. Hyol, confused, asks Guangdu why he holds such a grudge against him. But before Guangdu can respond, Tang Hae interjects. She argues that it's dishonorable for someone of Guangdu's stature, as a representative of the orthodox path, to let past emotions dictate his actions and lead him to make poor decisions. Her words strike a chord, and Guangdu begins to question his own actions. While Hyol stands there, still confused, Guangdu reflects on his behavior, realizing that taking out his anger on someone else is unjust. Acknowledging that he has tarnished Manhwa's reputation, Guangdu apologizes for his earlier foolishness. Before Hyol can respond, Seolhwa bursts through the prison wall and immediately hugs him. She then locks eyes with Guangdu and, with her usual bluntness, asks Hyol who this man is. Furious once more, Guangdu mutters bitterly, "Senior brother." As the commotion in the government office grows more chaotic at midnight, curious bystanders gather outside to figure out what's happening inside. Among them is a purple-haired, middle-aged woman, unidentified for now, wondering what on earth the government office is up to this time. Apparently, the person her sect sent on an errand was utterly useless and botched the job. Meanwhile, Kyung arrives at the government building through a secret passageway and finds Seolhwa facing off against Baldi. Pleading with her not to destroy the government office, Kyung soon uncovers signs of foul play. As she pieces together the situation, Elder Hyunsung appears behind her, begging for his life. In the meantime, Hyol tries to reason with Baldi, urging him to reconsider fighting Seolhwa, as it might all be a misunderstanding. But Baldi is too consumed by rage to listen. He screams, declaring that Seolhwa took everything from him. Seolhwa, confused, demands that he reveal his identity and explain what she took. As Baldi continues ranting, Hyol finally steps in. He declares that if Seolhwa has wronged Baldi in any way, he will take responsibility for it as her partner. Baldi is dumbfounded, unable to believe his ears, as Hyol's words make little sense to him. To de-escalate the situation, Hyol even suggests that he'll seek Jihyun's forgiveness if that's what it takes to break the endless cycle of conflict in Jianghu. He explains that he's already promised Seolhwa to share her burdens and spend his future with her. Even if Seolhwa never intended harm, Hyol insists on taking responsibility for her actions. Hyol then boldly tells Baldi to reclaim whatever Seolhwa took from him. Baldi asks if Hyol is serious, and when he confirms, Kyung cuts in to remind Baldi, Gwangdu, that they're all disciples of the Manhwa sect leader. But Gwangdu dismisses her, saying it doesn't matter anymore. Following the sacred grudges of the Murim, he declares that he'll shave Hyol's head as restitution for Seolhwa's wrongdoing. Everyone had expected a far more severe declaration, so the room collectively falls into disappointment when Gwangdu reveals his grudge about Seolhwa ruining his hair. Before Gwangdu can continue his tirade, the purple-haired woman from earlier arrives, smacks him on the head, and calls him a fool for making his situation worse. Upon hearing that her errand boy had been thrown in jail, she reveals she came rushing to the scene, only to find him causing more trouble over a petty grudge. After reprimanding Gwangdu, she introduces herself as Cheon Young, Cheon for short, an elder of Mount Hua, and apologizes for her disciple's misconduct. Cheon then recognizes Tang Hai as the Poison Phoenix and congratulates her on reaching a remarkable level of mastery at such a young age. Soon after, she notices Seolhwa and identifies her as the infamous Sun and Moon Sword. As she's about to mention Chaos Sword Demon by name, Kyung intervenes, claiming that Hyol is her personal guard. Kyung tries to assure Cheon that Hyol has nothing to do with the current situation, urging her to remain calm. Cheon agrees, stating she's not here to threaten anyone. But now that she's seen the demon up close, she admits the rumors of him being a womanizer seem to be true. On behalf of her disciples' mistakes, Cheon offers herself to Hyol as an appropriate apology. Hyol is appalled and immediately rejects her, telling her to act her age. Unbothered, Cheon continues to proposition him, prompting Tang Hai to call her an old hag and chastise her lack of shame as a Taoist elder. Tang Hai even points out that Cheon had flirted with her brother the last time they met. Annoyed, Cheon fires back, claiming she never wanted to be an elder in the first place. She reveals that the Mount Hua sect leader tricked her into rolling with the demon cult during the Great Demon Cult War in her prime years. Afterward, she was forced into the elder position due to merit distribution, which ruined her chances of marriage. Confused, Hyol asks how old Cheon must be if she fought in the Demon Cult War. Cheon lies, saying she's 25, but Tang Hai quickly clarifies that multiplying that number by 2 would be closer to her real age. Unfazed, Cheon argues that since Hyol already has 3 women, adding one more wouldn't hurt. Cheon's persistence angers Seolhwa, who's had enough of her nonsense. To Seolhwa, nothing matters more than Hyol, and these distractions have stolen the time she promised to spend with him. Plus, Hyol was endangered because of her mistakes. Determined to end it, Seolhwa unsheathes her sword and attacks Cheon. Cheon deflects the strike, redirecting it toward Elder Hyunsung and Tang Hae. Now, both women glare at each other, ready to fight over the Chaos Sword Demon. Before the chaos can erupt, Hyol tries to calm Seolhwa down, but Cheon wonders how dangerous Seolhwa might become when Hyol is involved. Elder Hyunsung, fearing for his life, interrupts and reveals the precious cargo the government had been hiding. When given an audience, Hyunsung explains that Jihyun ordered him to orchestrate everything, leaving him no choice but to obey. Before he can elaborate, Jihyun screams from outside, ordering the Murim scoundrels in the office to surrender and submit to the law, as they are surrounded.